How's it going, everybody? Jordan Sather here, and I'm very excited today to be welcoming back to my program here and bringing you another interview with none other than Robert David Steele. Fantastic conversation with this man every time I have him on, so I was delighted to be able to get another chance to bring him onto my YouTube channel here and share with you a very recent interview that I did with him discussing all this craziness that's going on in the world. We discuss a little bit about those sealed indictments. We discuss Israel and Zionism and false flags and, of course, all the behind-the-scenes current events that the mainstream media is trying to put their spin on. Now, if you don't know who Robert David Steele is, he's actually a former spy who was recently recommended for the Nobel Peace Prize. He's the founder of the open source intelligence discipline and the author of the Open Source Everything Manifesto. And he has proposed to Donald Trump an open source agency that would actually create a post-Google internet that could not be censored. Not only this, but he was one of two people, with former NSA official William Binney being the other, that has showed Attorney General Jeff Sessions how to leverage unprocessed NSA data to find every traitor, every pedophile, and every white-collar criminal in the United States of America. And lastly, he was the co-founder, along with Dr. Cynthia McKinney, of the #UNRIG campaign, which looks to create a concept for an electoral reform act that would bury the two-party tyranny. So with all that being said, I'm excited to bring you this conversation, and thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoy. Welcome back to the program, Robert David Steele. I'm excited to have you here today.
Well, Jordan, you're a star, and I follow your stuff even if YouTube doesn't send me my subscription notice.
Yeah, there's been plenty of interesting shadow banning and a lot of other censorship that we'll definitely get to here today. But being now November 27th, we are a few weeks into this Q phenomenon that I want to call it. And basically what this is what seems to be elements of an alliance or white hats within the military-industrial complex that are trying to get seeds out to the public for people to keep researching. And one of these big seeds is a whole lot of sealed indictments that there's word about. What's your thoughts on all these?
Well, first off, I'm very familiar with Q in the sense that I have people that send me all their stuff. I don't monitor 4chan. I respect 4chan. I find everything that Q has said to be interesting and largely credible. I myself don't have time for riddles, so I prefer to rely on sources that just give me everything. I will shout out to Steve Piesnak. He was one of the first guys to talk about white hats and people really wanting Trump to be able to defeat the deep state. So I think all of this is very real. Benjamin Fulford has just come out with a long laundry list of things that he says happening. The Marines did not invade Langley. He's wrong on that. However, they do appear to have buzzed Langley. And that's interesting in and of itself. Long and the short of it is, I think all of the truthers are converging. The white hats inside of the government are emergent. And I believe Donald Trump is on the verge of a massive triumph against the deep state, the 1%, and the criminals like the M13 gangs that facilitate the Kazafian mafia's money movement, drugs and children and all of this. So Trump is, I think, with Jeff Sessions, about to cut the head off the snake.
Absolutely. And we see, for instance, overseas, some of the heads of this beast are beginning to fall. We have the cleanup of hundreds of different officials and even princes in Saudi Arabia going on. Do you expect this sweep to extend to other states, other nations, and how long, in your eyes, do you expect this to take to get to America?
Well, first off, it's already in America. A lot of people, I have no direct knowledge, but everything I'm seeing and reading says a lot of people have been neutralized. And if you look carefully, you won't see Bill Gates or George Soros in public right now. Stuff is going on behind the scenes. I do expect this to reach Israel. My Mossad colleagues have been very angry at Netanyahu for a very long time. Arnon Milchan is the connector all the way from the JFK assassination. Arnon Milchan was the other key Israeli together with Yitzhak Rabin. Arnon Milchan is very central to 9/11. In fact, he did 2 movies showing airplanes driving in. I think he was huge in the whole narrative for 9/11. And of course, Netanyahu's being indicted for bribery, and it may have been blackmail, where Netanyahu was blackmailing Arnon Milchan. So there's some very interesting things going on here. ASEAN, where I shot a documentary with Steven Seagal in May of 2017, had a number of meetings with senior people, retired prime ministers and generals, and I believe that ASEAN is about ready to clean up as well. So from Duterte in the Philippines, the Indonesian president who was participating, most people haven't noticed this, the Indonesian president was co-equal to Xi, Putin, and Donald Trump in the private meeting off the record in Vietnam. That's huge.
Do you think that, and I wasn't aware of that, I wasn't aware that the Indonesian prime minister having that equal ground, does that have anything to do with the gold or collateral accounts?
Yes, I think there's a fact that Indonesia is the largest Muslim nation on the planet in terms of demographics, and it is sitting on the largest store of captured gold buried in mines. Twice as big, Neil Keenan tells me, twice as big as the stuff that's still left in the Philippines. So all of the gold that the Japanese stole is coming back to China, coming back to the Chinese diaspora. It will back the new international reserve currency, and it will help accelerate the nationalization of all of the central banks and the ending of fiat currencies.
Beautiful. And it's really seeming to be Putin, Trump, and the Chinese president, and like you said, the Indonesian president, versus this kind of rogue quasi-governmental deep state. And you've told me, and I've even speculated for months now, I think this is how you originally found me, was Putin and Trump working together behind the scenes to really attack the deep state.
Well, I give Putin a lot of credit because as best I can tell, Putin suckered Hillary Clinton and Barack Obama with uranium one. I mean, that is the coolest honey trap I've ever seen. More to the point, Putin and Trump both understand that pedophilia is the Achilles heel of the deep state. I've been saying this for some time. People have not wanted to believe it. I'm a commissioner on the International Tribunal for Natural Justice, which has a pedophilia project being run by a Chief Justice. I'm helping nurture a book by Joaquim Hagopian, a West Point graduate, called Pedophilia and Empire, Satan, Sodomy, and the Deep State. It's free online. All 11 chapters that he's written are free online right now at tinyurl/pedoempire. And the next 23 chapters are going to finish the job. He's already destroyed the Catholic Church, the US military, and CIA. The next 23 chapters will destroy Wall Street, corporations, governors, and Hollywood.
Beautiful. And that fact alone, that there being pedo elites that are into cult rituals and that use this concept of pedophilia to bribe and blackmail the rest of the political and corporate class to do their bidding, it's such a obviously deep topic. Do you think the Uranium One scandal is going to unravel and that's going to allow the rest of this information to come to the mass public?
The short answer, Jordan, is no. Now, I've given you a private copy of the letter that Bill Binney and I sent to Jeff Sessions. Uranium One is a very tiny piece of the total mosaic. What Binney and I did with our letter of the 26th of May 2017 was show the president and Jeff Sessions how they could take the 99% of the data in NSA that has not been processed and basically unpack it to get the names, dates, and places of every traitor, every agent of a foreign power, every major elite pedophile, the Wall Street lawyers channeling the children into the pedophiles, and the white-collar criminals from Goldman Sachs and beyond. So I will tell you that while I have no direct knowledge of what the president and Jeff Sessions have done with what Binney and I gave them, I do believe they now have every name, and that the people who have not been indicted understand that they're on notice and we can clean them up anytime we want. Donald Trump is holding all of the cards.
And this actually corroborates some of the points that were made in those Q posts. So my next question is, do you think that's an ankle monitor around Hillary Clinton and John McCain's ankles?
I honestly don't know.
Yeah.
There are other ways of monitoring people, including chipping them. There are lots of different ways to beaconize Clinton and Pelosi and Feinstein and McCain and Lindsey Graham, Chuck Schumer.
Yes.
I mean, if you really look at, I was looking at a list of all of the people who are members of Congress who are not only dual citizens, dual U.S.-Israeli citizens. It's an astonishing list. And I was also looking at all of the people who I believe are being blackmailed by not just the Mossad with the Jeffrey Epstein pedophilia thing, but by CIA, the FBI, and NSA. We have an awful lot of cleaning up to do here. But I do believe that at the end of the day, 2018 is going to be the year of the independent, libertarian, and green being elected to Congress. And I believe that 2018 could be the year in which we get a whole new Congress. I'm very concerned that President Trump is not paying attention to the calls that Cynthia McKinney and I have put out for hashtag UNRIG. There's now a ball cap. Hashtag UNRIG seeks to give the president the gift of an honest Congress. If he were to introduce the Election Reform Act, he would stop, among other things, his impeachment, because the Democrats are poised now to take the Senate as well as the House back in 2018, unless Donald Trump does three things: the Election Reform Act, the open source agency with the two-way Trump channel so we can do trumpets. This is the post-Google internet. And finally, a national conversation about grand strategy that gets the public to say how they feel about nationalizing the Federal Reserve, legalizing marijuana and hemp, closing all of our military bases overseas, ending the income tax, and reverting to transaction tax, okay, which is equal and applies to currency and stock transactions. So I would say Donald Trump is on the verge of a triumph against the 1%. He has not yet turned his attention to the 99%, and that's where I really want to help him be the greatest president ever.
So you're exactly, you're ready for the
it.
next steps, which is fantastic. And I would also add to that list the disclosure of all the hidden technologies that are locked away from humanity too.
That's an extremely important point. I'm really glad you brought that up. There are over 5,000, maybe as many as 6,000 repressed technologies. Stephen Aftergood of the Federation of American Scientists is one of my heroes. He's done a great job of tracking all of this. I believe that when the president finishes completing all of his investigations, we will find that there are two centers of evil in the U.S. government. One of them is the CIA, and the other one is the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, which is where the other half of the Nazis went.
Yes, yes. And not a lot of many people know, but Hillary Clinton and John Podesta are both very close to a lot of the special access programs that involve this kind of advanced technologies that are locked away in those projects. So that
yes, and I would include mind control. It wasn't until I read Kathy O'Brien's book, Transformation of America, that I realized that it was NASA, not CIA, that was the lead agency for mind control and for basically devising all of these very advanced technologies for repressing and controlling publics. There are, by my estimate, 1/3 of the U.S. government budget is being spent on evil. 1/3 is waste, and 1/3 is righteous stuff done badly. And that's why the president needs an open source agency to basically eliminate all of that waste. And at the same time, if I've learned one thing in the last 40 years, it's that open source intelligence is one part of the solution, but absolutely ruthless, intrusive counterintelligence is the other part. The FBI is a theatrical agency. It is not a serious counterintelligence organization. That needs to change. I want to triple the FBI's budget, but I also want to teach them how to draw blood.
There you go. And I want to touch on one thing that you mentioned earlier, and that was the Google Gestapo that you brought up. And recently, of course, me primarily being on YouTube, I've been a part of some of the kind of shadow banning, and I've seen that directly. What can you tell me about your work in taking down the Google Gestapo?
Well, I haven't done any work in taking down Google Gestapo as much as I'm the guy that originated the term hashtag Google Gestapo. And I certainly encourage people to use that hashtag Google Gestapo. What I have done based on my own personal experience, and remember, the CIA built the artificial intelligence staff around me in 1986. Most people don't know that. And I wrote the first warning letter to the White House in 1994 about cyber vulnerability and so forth. And I refused a job on covert action staff at CIA because I found it beneath contempt. I'm very, very familiar with all of the different ways that censorship, crowd stalking, and digital assassination can occur. And I noticed in the 1990s that the Zionists were at the forefront of what I call digital assassination. And here's how it works very simply. Someone writes a comment to Rolling Stone or Slate or Truth Out or whatever, and they're critical of the Zionists. 12 Zionist trolls come in immediately and report that person as a hater, a spammer, or more recently as having pornographic content. Bam! The algorithm, because Rolling Stone is dealing with millions of comments and they just cannot do human monitoring of all of this. Immediately, the algorithm digitally assassinates that person without due process. They have been doing this now for 30 years.
Mm-hmm.
What I did with my article, which your viewers can find, and you can put it in the description, but tinyurl.com/Google Gestapo. That is an article at the American Herald Tribune. It's also available free online at Phi Beta Iota. They're both free online, but my backstop is at Phi Beta Iota. That article lays out what I believe to be the elements of Google Gestapo. And they're much more than just the internet. They include, for example, meetup.com, canceling hashtag UNRIG, which was paying them $77,300 for 435 professional meetups in one unified national network. They canceled us on the 14th of July. At the same time that they're providing $195,000 in illegal, undeclared, in-kind campaign contributions to the Democratic National Committee by sponsoring 1,087 hashtag resist meetups for whom the fees have been waived. Now, the common denominator across the entire Zionist Google Gestapo system is the Anti-Defamation League. All paths lead to the Anti-Defamation League. Those are the people, I believe, that set in motion paid defamation, trolls, both paid and volunteer. I have over 400 trolls that I've identified in one specific area by name. Those are the people who can tell the CEO of Meetup to cancel a $77,000 program. Maybe they gave him $77,000 under the table so that he would cancel it. Maybe they paid the $195,000 for the fee waivers for 1,087 hashtag meetups. And then, of course, you have my website. Phi Beta Iota has just been declared by Kaspersky to be a pornographic website.
Oh, man, that means you're right over the target.
This doesn't happen by accident.
Mm-hmm.
This is trolls going to Kaspersky, which I'm sure works for Russian intelligence. I had to fire Kaspersky because I found Russian malware was being allowed to sneak into my system, even though Kaspersky was allegedly protecting it. So I don't trust Kaspersky as far as I can throw a grand piano by the stool. So Kaspersky's dirty, but so is everyone else. Norton, all these guys, they're lazy. They allow Zionist trolls to declare a website pornographic. Jeff Rentz, for example, probably the single most influential anti-Zionist in the United States of America. Mm-hmm. His website has also been declared pornographic. What that means is that people trying to access Rents.com or PhiBetaIota.net from any library, most corporations, most governments are told access denied. This is a pornographic website. There is exactly one photo on my website that could even be considered slightly pornographic. It's the photo of the Iraqi girl being raped at Abu Ghraib by 6 Americans in uniform. That's the only photo on my website that shows nudity. So it's a system. And it's a system that I believe includes Hollywood. Again, Arnon Milchan keeps coming up. Harvey Weinstein keeps coming up. And there are others. We have been in the United States under attack by ideological subversion that is not communist. It's Zionist.
Yes.
And I think we're coming now, God bless Donald Trump and God bless the people who helped put him in power. I think we're coming to an end of Zionist influence in the United States of America. They've had now, by my count, 6 strikes. Strike 7 should do them in.
And what are these 6 strikes?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked that leading question. I wrote about this in an article, War in the Middle East, that I put together recently, because I believe I had a brunch meeting with a cabinet level member of Ronald Reagan's cabinet. I'm an old Reaganite. And he said that he's absolutely certain that Netanyahu believes he has the votes in Congress to issue a declaration of war in February of 2018. That's the target date. Now, I'm hoping that Donald Trump is accelerating all of his moves against the deep state in order to preclude Congress from declaring war. Because unlike an order to launch a nuclear missile, which could be construed as illegal if there's no congressional declaration of war, if Congress declares war and tells the Secretary of Defense he has to send troops to the Middle East, even though that's not in America's best interest, that's a whole different kettle of fish. So starting with the proposition that Netanyahu, who is under indictment and could perhaps be eliminated by his own people, that would be a good thing. If we have a congressional declaration of war, that's a real problem. So in the process of writing that article, I listed what I saw as the 5 strikes that the Zionists have incurred, and they've been overplaying their hand recently. Here are the 5 strikes I listed. Number 1, the USS Liberty. Totally known now that Israel set out to destroy that ship. One Israeli officer who refused to fire on the American flag was court-martialed and imprisoned, and I hope he's out now and safe. Another Israeli pilot is saying, let's fuck the American bitch. Okay, this is not good. So that's strike 1. Strike 2 is 9/11. The Zionists started planning that in 1988. The Zionists are the ones who set it all up. Dick Cheney took it over. Dick Cheney is a totally owned Zionist whore. Strike 3 is this bill before Congress, which makes it a felony to criticize Israel and call for a boycott of Israel. I mean, how stupid do you have to be to co-sponsor a bill like that? Because that is your death sentence in the next election. Strike 4 is that we found that there are 23 states where you're not allowed to get disaster relief or have a contract with the state unless you swear loyalty to Israel first. I don't make this stuff up. And recently in Kansas, a teacher lost her job for boycotting Zionist products with her own money on her own time. Again, they're overplaying their hand. They're using the U.S. Chamber of Commerce ALEC code book to basically subvert states and localities. And I think they're going to see massive pushback. And then Las Vegas is strike 5. I think Sheldon Adelson and Michael Chertoff and George Schwartz Sotos are going to hang, metaphorically speaking, in the United States sometime in the next 3 years. Now, strike 6 just came in after I wrote that article. Absolutely superb article in Haaretz, which is one of my favorite Israeli publications. Really great article in which Netanyahu is essentially quoted as telling the American progressive Jews, which is 2/3 to 3/4 of all American Jews, to fuck off. They have no rights. They're not going to get access to the Wailing Wall. They are nothing. Netanyahu is going with the Orthodox Jews, the crypto Jews, and the evangelicals. And so for me, that's strike 6, because I have always distinguished between Zionism and Judaism. Zionism bad, Jews good. And what I see now is the American Jews are finally starting to wake up to the fact that Netanyahu is toxic and Zionism is toxic and Israel is not America's friend. You want to go America first? We can do it, and we can bring the Jews and the Latinos with us.
Beautiful. So what do you see as the plan going forward then? What is your specific plan going forward, I should ask?
Well, my specific plan going forward is to do everything I can to get the president to understand that the three things I've been recommending since July of 2015. Your viewers can find my Trump Revolution series, which is up to 19 items now, at Amazon.com. But I would hasten to add that every title is also free online at Phi Beta Iota. I'm not pimping these books. They're actually Kindle Shorts. I hope that Donald Trump is almost ready in the January-February timeframe to turn away from the 1% and focus on the 99%. He's already lost half of us that put him in power. I've got a report card that I just published from a citizen on Donald Trump. He's got 43 failures and something like 20 successes and then about 30 in-betweens. He has not stopped elective wars overseas. He has not left NATO. He has not nationalized the Federal Reserve. He has not thrown the United Nations out of New York. There's a lot he hasn't done. There's also a lot he's done, and I have to stress, Donald Trump's success has come in the face of enormous resistance. All presidents since John F. Kennedy were essentially held up by the deep state and were allowed and made to succeed. So every success Donald Trump has had so far is hard won against the deep state. My bottom line is there are three things Donald Trump has to do to empower the 99% and have himself more power over Congress than he does now. Number one is the Election Reform Act. If he doesn't do that and get some independents, libertarians, and Greens into the Congress in 2018, he is going to be impeached by the Democratic Congress. Number two is the open source agency and the Trump channel, which is a two-way channel where 150 million people can send him emails and can respond to Trumpettes. We bury Twitter, Google, YouTube, and Facebook. And then number three is lead a national conversation about grand strategy. Where should America be going? If the president wants to be the greatest president ever, he can't be a decider who makes decisions in a small inner circle of friends that include 9 Goldman Sachs bankers and 1 Goldman Sachs bimbo. Okay? He actually has to embrace the American public. If he goes out to the American public and says, should we nationalize the Federal Reserve? And 75% of them come back in and say, yes, it's game over. Similarly, should we stop the income tax? Should we close our bases overseas? Should we legalize marijuana? Should we close the Department of Education? Should we have free energy and unlimited desalinated water? These are all things that are within his power, but only if he stands on the shoulders of the American public. So I would like to see Donald Trump be the greatest president ever, but he won't get there without an open source agency and a Trump channel.
So let's hope in these next 2 months that we do see some of these indictments actualize and a swamp drain occur here. It sounds like these are dire times.
I think it will happen. I think Trump is doing very well on the 1%, but now he needs to pivot. And I'm proud to have helped with the 1%. I will probably never get credit for that, and I may never know the degree to which they acted on our advice, but Benny and I are as good as it gets with respect to NSA and CIA. We're the last two honest guys standing in retirement. There are others, but we're at the forefront. And so he's done that. Now he needs to pivot. Now we need to give every American a job, energy, water, clean food without Monsanto. We need to bury Coca-Cola and Nestle, and most of what the Koch brothers do. That's the correct pronunciation, by the way, Koch brothers. And so I really think that Trump is at the beginning of what could be the greatest presidency ever. And I will know that he's there when a third of the U.S. Congress resigns because they are known pedophiles.
Well, Rob, I appreciate the work that you've done to get us up to this point, and I wanted to thank you for talking to me today.
Oh, Jordan, you're a star. I'm really, really glad. I'll never again wear this hat, but this one time I wanted to wear the hashtag UNRIG hat, which is now available from somebody else, Hydrogen Garage. We don't sell anything here.
Awesome, Rob. Well, thank you for being on with me today.
Bye-bye.